don't know why, but what I have running through my head is, takes me one step closer to the edge, and I'm about to
I know exactly why.
break.
Well, hold on. I don't know the break. That's a good one. It's because I look like a guy that listens to a lot of Linkin Park, and not only listens to a lot of it, talks about it way too much.
Like that's what we were just listening to before we hit record.
Hey man, have you heard this song by this band called Linkin Park? That dude died. Oh. R.I.P. my friend. Welcome to This Feels Funny. My name is Tyler Jones.
I'm Kat West.
Get your little half glass of bubbles.
With my little beverage.
Yeah. And this is a podcast where we like to talk about feelings and emotions. A silly podcast about real feelings.
Yeah,
right?
trying to be authentic, but not take everything so seriously. Because everybody takes everything so seriously all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. We're both comedians here, and where we're located. Figure it out. You do the math.
Do your research, man. I don't know. Look it up.
That reminds me of that fucking movie. It's like he died doing what he loved. His own research. Poor guy.
Oh, God, I could get that touches on stuff.
It sure does. Anyway. Yeah, it could use probably some self-help, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're gonna talk about both of us when we started thinking of the idea of doing this podcast, we both kind of reject a lot of the traditional podcast and social media things that are based around self-help because a lot of it is so sanctimonious and it's so like preachy almost and like holier than thou. Like I know the thing and
yeah, exactly. Like slideshows that basically pertain specifically to you or a guy that stands there or sits there and he's just like, let me say something that means nothing to you in a low voice, but it's captivating, isn't it? Remember that one guy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. And
did you just get like emotionally triggered like thinking about that? Like,
just another man who thinks he knows my experience.
Yes. Well, he has a backwards hat on.
Yeah, exactly. That's his credentials. A backwards flat bill hat, man. That's all you need.
Yeah, but he has glasses, so he's smart. So, but yes, exactly the point. We want to make sure that we're focusing on like the main point of this is why is self-help? Why has it become so detrimental? Like resources, there's good and bad to it. Don't get me wrong. It helps to reframe things.
Yeah.
But where do you stand on like self-help and how it's impacted you?
Well, so I actually have a significant thing to say about this is that I've kind of rejected the idea of self-betterment. Like I made a joke about like my New Year's resolution is to try and be no better. I'm actually trying to get a little worse.
Hell yeah.
Because this constant quest for self-betterment and self-improvement can kind of put you in a box where you're constantly looking at yourself as a problem to be fixed.
Yeah.
And that can be really demoralizing. And it's so exhausting to get on Instagram and see people who are just spewing all these ways that you should be better or that you should change yourself. And it's like, well, okay, I mean, maybe some of it, but like...
Yeah.
Ugh.
It can provide like a new way of thinking.
Yeah.
Or like, hey, what am I not doing that I should be doing or could be doing that would bring me more fulfillment? But to say this is the concrete way to correct it.
Yes.
Right?
That's what really gets to me is like with influencers, people who just like pretend like they have the answer for you. And that like if you just did things the way that they're describing it, then things would be better for you. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, and so I think what I wanted this podcast to be, and we've talked about this, is like it's less about us saying we know and more about sharing our experience.
Exactly. And I think that that's a good point to bring up, and we'll start doing this in future episodes, is saying like we're not professionals by any means on this stuff. We're just people that have really taken a lot of time to experience things, and we just want to share our perspective on it from a lighthearted and funny point of view. So we'll tie that next time. Wink. I'm not your mommy. I'm not your therapist. I can't fix you. Exactly. That's my new mantra. Nor do I want to.
Beautiful. Exactly that.
You got a beer here. So I think there's good self-help and there's bad self-help, like I was saying before too, and you brought up a really good point, because it's like we have internet stuff and how it's devolved, in my opinion. When I was younger, my when my parents split up, obviously that's hard for anybody that's like a 14-year-old, because like you have an understanding, like I remember that vividly, like, and I knew what was happening, I could figure it all out. It's my parents, I'm very grateful for them, because they immediately were like, we need to make sure that me and my little sister, we were put into therapy instantly, because
Beautiful.
they knew exactly what we were going to need.
They're like, we can't be the space to provide for this divorce. Like, you can't take it. That's really lovely.
And there's too much emotion, so I was very fortunate to be able to experience that. And I think one of the things that my therapist gave me, though, when I was much younger, because I had like a lot of self-esteem problems, you know, I didn't, like, when I was like in 8th grade, whatever, 9th grade, I didn't hit my growth spurt till I was like, I hit like a first growth spurt, and then everybody surpassed me, and then I hit a second one, so I hit like half of puberty. It was very weird. So I got bullied a lot, and I got made fun of, and I'm not like exactly a tall guy now, and people still think about that, by the way. They're just like, you know, I'm like 5'8", it's like a normal height, but like some people are like, you're little, and I'm like, so is your mom.
Yeah, no,
got him. But it was a book called 10 Steps to Self-Esteem, and it's a workbook. Oh yeah, for sure. Turn your phone off. I'm just kidding. Yeah. Did you get a little email that now? It was a really nice book, and that was helpful, and it was guided, and it gave me a lot of advice, and it was good for me at the time, and it's something I can go back to. A lot of like happy wappy like bullshit stuff, but that's since changed in how it's presented. Everybody has like the right idea. What are your thoughts on, like, let's take like books just alone. Let's take like books and articles and how that's evolved. I'm curious to know your thoughts there.
Well, so I've read a couple like in the self-help genre books, and the ones that have resonated the most with me and that I continue to stick with are not the ones where they're trying. I mean, it just kind of goes back. It boils down to me to this idea of like, I know the right way to fix you, versus somebody who's willing to get vulnerable and say, these are the things that I went through. Yeah. And this is the way that I got through it. And that, like, you know, and not automatically assuming anybody, the reader is going to need that, want that, or have to go through that to reach this thing, you know? And I really disconnect whenever I feel the energy of somebody I mean, this goes into so many other things, but like, if you tell me you know exactly the way that you should do it, I'm like, nah, no. That's how I know you're wrong for sure.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Definitely not going to listen to you. And I get all this resistance because I also just don't like being told what to do. I like when people, I hate authority. I hate authority. I'm like, don't pretend like you know me. Yeah. You don't know me.
Is there much? I'm curious to know. Is there much of a difference? Because I'm like in a similar way where it's like I need you to do this. Well, I was gonna until you told me to do it.
Yeah, I forget what the term is for that. It's like there's been a lot of stuff on social media about. I think it's like task demand avoidance.
Task demand avoidance.
Like demand avoidance is like, once you've told me I have to do it, I'm like, go fuck yourself.
I love that.
I was gonna do it, but now that you told me I have to, I'm gonna prove you wrong.
Because I would just define that person as a prick.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just
I'm a
like,
prick.
Nobody likes that energy. Yeah. Like, but there is sometimes where it's like, it's. I think part of it comes down to like, is the energy of it kind of sanctimonious and holier than thou? Yeah. And that's when I really reject. Versus somebody being like, hey, you know, it probably would help. And I'm like, God damn it, you're right. Fuck you. Versus somebody being like, yeah, you're never going to get anywhere unless you do that. I'm like, well, way more fuck you. And I will not be doing that just on the basis that you told me in that way. And even when the advice is solid, I'm still like, it's so much of my perception is the way that it's being given and communicated.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that like so the communication, it is easier to digest when I'm like reading it in like a book format, right? Yeah. And it's like it's given, especially when that book is advised to me to be read by a loved one. Yeah. Because then I can almost hear it from like their voice.
You're seeing how it reflects in them, and
Right. Like there's a book, it came out recently. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's that Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck book.
Yeah, I read that. That was one of the ones that kind of peeked to my mind.
Yeah,
when you asked me.
It's an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like he says a whole lot of helpful stuff and simultaneously says the same thing for 200 pages.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I didn't finish it, but
Yeah.
I was like, good
You
thought.
got the gist.
Good thought. Yeah, I think I got
Yeah.
the gist. I got the gist. Is like, don't care so much about the perceptions of other people. Do what you want to do.
It's like,
I'm like,
this could have
cool.
been an email. It's just like, why did you say it for? It's literally just like, all right, step 1, don't give a fuck about other things. Step 2, here's how you don't give a fuck. Instructions, subset 2.A. Just don't. I'm like, okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
Just complete that same step through 14, and you're in a good spot. And I respect it.
Mm-hmm.
But what was nice is it was given to me by a respected colleague.
Yeah.
And I said, this is great. And that was one of those things, like I mentioned in the previous episode about like my podcast, not my podcast, Jesus Christ.
You're doing great. No.
The sales,
Yeah.
the sales role, choosing to not give a fuck about other things
Mm-hmm.
and then exiting out of people pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that reading is good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it depends on who delivers it to you. That leads me to the big question here too. Like, as it's evolved, it's turned into, now we're on to blogging, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
seeing it from we have Psychology Today telling you one thing, which is fine. It's usually based in some sort of research and science. But then I go on to themedium.com, which is a blog written by a life coach, which, don't get me wrong, I'm happy to hear what you have to say.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts there?
There's a, I don't want to be offensive, but so many people go into life coaching, and I'm like, you should probably get your life together first.
Yeah.
And it's a I just personally, I don't want to assume that I know anybody's life well enough
Yeah.
that I'm going to be the answer to their problems, which is why I don't post a lot of stuff that's self-helpy. If you see me posting something that's more vulnerable and about changing yourself or being more aware on social media, I'm always doing it in the way where I'm I'm doing my best to make it not personal to the other person and make it all about me.
Yeah.
In a way where I'm revealing something that's a little bit uncomfortable that I don't really want to, and it's a little bit pathetic maybe, but that somebody would see that,
Yeah.
And somebody would be like, oh man, I felt pathetic like that too, instead of coming from this energy of this is what I figured out. I'm done. I've closed the loop, and now I've got a finished thought for you, versus being like, I struggle with that sometimes. It hurts really bad.
Okay.
And that's how I felt the most seen, is when people are like, I still struggle with this, but this is how I continue to work through it. And I don't like when people try to make their point by pretending it's the end, that they've finished this process and that they've come to a full, complete conclusion. I mean, you mentioned science. Science is this idea of we're just constantly getting to know a little bit more. It's never a complete certainty once you get to the end of the scientific process. It's this is what it has shown us.
Okay.
It can be repeated, but there could still be more to know.
So it sounds to me like what you're saying is that the cycle, you don't want people to feel like there's some sort of destination that they need to be reaching through this process.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's my resistance with the self-help industry, is people who come on I finished. You could too. I'm I personally don't think I will ever get to that place where I feel like, oh, I'm done. I've self-actualized. I know myself fully and how I deal with it. I think I'm going to struggle with some of the things I struggle with right now for the rest of my life.
That's fair.
And that I'm just going to learn how to do it a little better.
Yeah.
And do it in a way that feels more authentic to me, versus being yep, this is my grand conclusion.
Yeah.
Be like me. And that energy, I just immediately, even if they have something good to say,
Yeah.
I'm just so resistant. Yeah.
So it sounds like one of the things, I guess, that kind of comes down to it is this whole, we have emotional intelligence, we have emotional resilience.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into those at another time, but I'm really curious to know your thoughts here then. If you have somebody who is sharing nonstop things online,
Mm-hmm.
and it's finding its audience, it's always tends to be, let's say if we're looking at Instagram, for instance,
Yeah.
we're seeing in any article that we see posted online, it tends to be the internet, because the internet is the people's whiteboard.
Yeah. I like that.
We can. Thanks. So. Why did I stop to process what you? Maybe it's what I needed to do.
Simple compliment.
I know, right? I like that. I was like, okay, take the compliment, move on. And I was like, thanks. Jesus Christ, buddy. Oh man.
Internet is the people's whiteboard.
Yeah. So it's like you see things put up. Like what they do is they generalize statements into bite-sized pieces that can be massive. So like whether it's calling somebody a narcissist, and that's a dark side. Everybody's a narcissist if they disagree with you or they don't make you happy.
Or if they do these 5 things, that's proof that they're a narcissist. I'm like, those things could be proof of so many other complications in their life.
Yeah.
Like those are behaviors that all of us engage in in some way.
Yeah. I've asked myself before, I said, am I a narcissist or am I just really fucking sleepy? Like, that's really it. Like, I can be out and about, like, talking to somebody, and it's like, if this person acts like they don't care about anything that you're saying, and they only want to focus on themselves, they might be a narcissist. It's like, no, I'm fucking tired. Maybe
They're hungry.
Yeah, I'm hungry. And maybe also, I don't like you.
Yeah, maybe you're being really boring.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
like, maybe
be
it's
more
you.
interesting, you know?
Like, maybe it is you. I don't know. And
Yeah.
I think...
As the grand proprietor of all things that are interesting, you must listen to my definition of such. It's the dumbest sentence I've ever said.
It was quite a sentence.
Yeah.
Hell
yeah, dude.
Hell yeah, brother.
Anyway, what were you going to say before I interrupted you with my Shakespeare?
Yeah, I just really resent in all of social media and all of these ways that people present information as they boil it down to such a point that it's like, well, of course that makes sense. You haven't said anything.
Yeah.
You haven't, and I just really think that like humans are so multifaceted that like it's so easy to pick out like 5 to 10 traits and be like, that's something that you are now. And it's like, well, like to some degree, I think that we all are all things.
For
I
sure.
truly believe that. Like, we all have some narcissism in us. We all have some codependency within us. We've all got like all of these things that you see just thrown around as buzzwords. And it's like, that's everybody though. Come on.
Isn't like what's one of the other buzzwords that really gets to me? Oh, it's attachment styles.
Yes, yeah. And that's something that I've had to really like. So talking about like self-help on social media, those attachment style videos where they act out the attachment to each other, I could.
Oh yeah.
Oh God! And like sometimes they're right, okay? Like sometimes they are right, but it's like we all do that to some degree with everybody in our lives.
Yeah, truly.
Like it's. And I think that it's so unhealthy to try and like think of all the ways that we're wrong about doing that, because so much of it, if you're talking about attachment, it's like stuff that is ingrained and stuff that you've learned before you knew how to know you were learning. Like,
no, that's
and
true.
so like it's I've tried to get away from this idea of like being like, this is why it's like that, and just being like, oh, I don't like how it feels right now. Let's like try and shift it. Yeah. Let's try and speak up and say something, make it a little different. Instead of being like, oh, I'm just avoidant.
Yeah.
That's just who I am. And now I just give in to that, Yeah.
Because I kind of felt like the whole point of the Attachment Styles book, too, to your point, was it wasn't about... it's always about adapting to another, right? It's like if I am an anxious attachment style, if I am an avoidant attachment style from secure... This book and workbook, it was a workbook, not just a book. It's a workbook with activities to do for yourself and with your partner. It's very solid book to read.
Okay.
And then somebody just basically regurgitated it into a article on a blogger site, and then it just made its rounds. I'm guessing that's usually how it always goes, right?
Yeah.
But it's about adapting and learning to speak the language of the other person. If I am an avoidant attachment style, I can recognize that within myself, and it's not about me fixing my attachment style. It's about me adapting to yours with mine. It's like the simple thing with like love languages. I met somebody a while back, and I had expressed to them, I am a person who appreciates words of affirmation, and I was classified as a needy person for this, which is something that stinks. It was like, no, it's not. What it is that's my dialect. And it's that same kind of thing. And it gets so convoluted down the line to be like people are starting to view other people's differences in these psychological terms and makeshift too.
Yeah.
As like problematic for themselves.
I mean, yeah, I think that like the whole self-help genre has made it so that we assign clinical meaning to behaviors that are just human and are sometimes very reasonable reactions. And it's like, you know what? Sometimes I am that way, and that's not a bad thing.
And I guess that goes back to everybody wanting to be the fucking smartest person in the room.
Yeah, like, oh, you're that way because of this.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, a little bit, but like also a myriad of other things that are playing into, and then also, you know, it kind of, a lot of self-help I find takes away the feeling of autonomy.
Sure.
And that's like really painful for me. It's that kind of like demand avoidance where it's like, I'm going to tell you exactly how you are. And I'm like, no, I'm not just that. I'm so many more things than that. And it feels disrespectful for you to say that some humans just are this way based on these few things. And it kind of erases this ability for the human experience to be very expansive and more than just something that can be categorized.
Okay.
I will say I don't want to go off on a tangent about it, but the love languages have been like debunked to a degree. They were done by a Christian man who was just like kind of trying to like traditional marriage was like the reason that he wrote this.
Oh yeah, it
like,
was so fucked. And I think that like go off on your tangent actually. Let's go.
So on that note also, the DSM, like the diagnostic standardized manual, it's like the mental illness manual, right? That like, it's so much of it is bullshit. I think so much of it is just baloney.
Really?
You know, like I don't agree with so many of the labels that people will casually like. I'm like, okay, that's their way of reacting to the human experience, and like you really only need a label if it's causing such significant dysfunction in your life that like you have to get help, you know?
Yeah, but
and I think categorizing and labeling things is this way of distancing ourselves from the human experience.
Totally.
And psychology too.
You know what I think we should do?
Yeah.
Let's part 2 this.
Okay, cool. Yeah. This is one that like we could both go off.
Yeah.
On like self-help in the psychology realm and the way that like some people's just like it teaches people to see themselves as intrinsically flawed.
Yeah.
Like you have a diagnosis of major depression or major anxiety or bipolar. Like that's one of those big ones that like if you like there's a lot of stigma around it. And I'm like I learned in school about bipolar as a this, right? Yeah. It's an up and a down. And I'm like, who the fuck is going like this? Who goes this way? Who? Fucking stupid crazy people. I don't agree. I don't agree with anyone doing this. And if you are, I think something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
Okay?
No,
because sometimes I do this all day long, okay? And I don't think I'm wrong for that. Okay? Okay, DSM?
The moose is looking at you right now.
He knows.
Well, thanks for listening to this first part of this podcast episode. Again, we're happy that you're here with us, watching along.
Seriously, so happy.
Yeah. Again, I'm Tyler Jones.
Cat West.
And we are, you can follow us on Instagram. You can follow us on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe there. And all the streaming platforms, follow. You'll get notified of the episodes. Hit that little button so that way it calculates it in the algorithm. And then one big thing, the more you do that, the better this podcast will become. I'll show you if you just do it.
We fuel from your validation. Give it to us.
Don't say that. That makes me sound sad.
I am sad.